You are not being misread. You are being measured. And the worst part is that your kindness is the measuring tool people use to decide how far they can push you. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps this channel reach people who actually want real psychology, not slogans. And if this hits a nerve, hit the like button too, because it tells the algorithm this is worth showing to someone who needs it. Now, if you have ever thought I was just being kind, why are they acting like I agreed to this? You have felt the exact phenomenon I want to name. This is not about you being naive. It is about how humans translate behavior into permission when they do not have clear social data. And most people never learn this because it sits in that uncomfortable zone between personality and power. Here is what I've observed across workplaces, friendships, families, and dating. People do not respond to your intentions. They respond to your constraints. Your intention is invisible. Your constraints are legible. Think about that for a second. When you say yes to an extra task, when you listen patiently to someone vent for 40 minutes, when you respond quickly, when you soften your tone after they snap at you, you think you are communicating kindness. What many people hear is capacity, and capacity in social systems gets treated like availability. The mechanism behind this starts with something basic but easy to miss. Humans are forced to infer boundaries from behavior, not from claims. You can say, "I have limits," and still train people to ignore you if your behavior consistently shows the opposite. There is an effect in learning theory called variable reinforcement. It is why slot machines are addictive. When a reward shows up unpredictably, the brain learns to keep pulling the lever. Now translate that into relationships. If you sometimes enforce a boundary, but usually you do not, you create the same learning pattern. People keep trying because occasionally it works. They do not even need to be malicious. Their nervous system learns, push a little, and sometimes I get access. This is why your kindness gets misread as permission more often when you are inconsistent. Not because you are weak, but because inconsistency turns you into a gambling machine. And people gamble. Let me show you what I mean with a painfully normal example. Someone texts you late at night. You answer because you are awake and you do not want to be rude. Next week they do it again. You ignore it because you are tired. Then one night you answer again because you feel guilty. What did you intend? Nothing. What did they learn? Late night access is possible. And once possible exists in someone's model of you, they will keep testing for it. Now here is where it gets interesting. Even when you are perfectly consistent, kindness can still be read as permission. Because the second mechanism is not about learning, it is about ambiguity. In any group, there is a constant quiet negotiation. Who absorbs discomfort? Who does the emotional labor? Who makes things smooth? Social systems hate friction, so when you enter a room and you reduce friction, you become valuable. But there is a catch. When a system finds someone who reliably reduces friction, it starts routing friction toward them, not as a conscious plan, as an efficiency move. This is the part people do not like admitting because it makes relationships sound like machines. But they are partially. They are networks optimizing for comfort. So when you are kind, patient, understanding, flexible, you are not just being a good person. You are telling the system, route the mess through me. I can handle it. And systems take you at your word. Notice the pattern here. The more you absorb, the more you are assigned. The more you are assigned, the more normal it feels to everyone else. And then one day you finally say, I cannot do this anymore, and people act shocked, even offended. Not because they forgot you are human, because you broke the system's prediction. That is a huge piece of why you feel misunderstood. You are not being evaluated morally, you are being predicted operationally. And there is a third layer, and this one is uncomfortable. Some people do not experience your kindness as generosity. They experience it as a status signal. In primate groups, grooming is not just hygiene, it is hierarchy. Who grooms whom, for how long, and who initiates it, all communicate rank and alliance. Humans have more sophisticated etiquette, but the underlying logic still leaks through. When you overgive, over-accommodate, over-explain, you can accidentally signal deference. Not because kindness is submissive, it is not, but because unreciprocated kindness can look like you are paying to stay included. And if someone already has a dominance orientation, meaning they see relationships through the lens of who yields, they will interpret your extra softness as you yielding. So they escalate, they interrupt more, they ask for more, they take longer to respond, they show up late, they act like your time is elastic. And you think, how did we get here? You got here because you were speaking one social language and they were reading another. This is nuanced, but important. Entitlement is not always a personality trait. Sometimes it is a perception created by asymmetric cost. If it costs you little, they assume it should cost you little. If you hide your cost, you erase the evidence that what they are asking is expensive. That is why I am happy to help can quietly destroy you. It makes the cost invisible. And invisible costs do not trigger reciprocity. There is research on reciprocity norms showing that people feel obligated to return favors when the favor is clear, intentional, and costly. But when the favor looks effortless, people categorize it as part of your role, your nature, or your just being you. That is when kindness turns into an expectation. Let me make that concrete. If you rearrange your schedule to help someone move and they see you sweating, sacrificing a Saturday, that triggers, I owe you. If you casually solve their problem in 10 minutes because you are competent, they often feel nothing. They might even feel entitled. Because in their mind you did not pay a price. Your competence became their access. This is why high competence, high empathy people get exploited without anyone intending to exploit them. You make hard things look easy. People respond to apparent effort, not actual effort. Stay with me, because the next layer flips the whole story. A lot of what you call kindness is not kindness. It is preemptive conflict management. Here is the mid-video reframe that changes everything. Many people are not using kindness to connect. They are using kindness to control outcomes, not in a villain way, in an anxious nervous system way. If you grew up around unpredictability, criticism, or emotional volatility, your brain learned a strategy. Stay ahead of other people's moods. Be useful. Be agreeable. Reduce risk. That can look like kindness on the outside, but the engine under it is threat detection. So when someone pushes you and you smile, when they overstep and you explain gently, when they disappoint you and you reassure them, you might think you are being kind, but your nervous system might be doing something else, buy in safety with compliance, and other people can sense that, not consciously, but they feel the texture. Kindness that is chosen has a certain solidity. Kindness that is fear-based has a certain softness. It feels negotiable. This is one of the most under-discussed cues in social interaction. Is your kindness anchored, or is it floating? Anchored kindness has edges. Floating kindness drifts to wherever the other person pulls it. That is why you can meet two equally warm people and only one gets taken advantage of. The difference is not how nice they are. The difference is whether their niceness has gravity. Now, do you want the simplest test for whether your kindness is being read as permission? Look at what happens when you introduce a small number. Not a dramatic boundary speech. A small number, like I cannot tonight, or I can do 15 minutes, not an hour, Or, I can help, but I need you to handle this part. Watch the response. Healthy people experience your no as information. They adjust. They might be disappointed, but they stay respectful. Entitled or dominance-oriented people experience your no as a status change. And that is why they react with guilt, pressure, sulking, or sudden coldness. They are not responding to the request. They are responding to the loss of access. And this is the key insight. The reaction tells you what your kindness meant to them. If your kindness was received as a gift, a boundary does not offend. If your kindness was being used as a resource pipeline, a boundary feels like sabotage. Now watch what happens in your own mind in those moments. Your guilt spikes. You start justifying. You start explaining. You start negotiating against yourself. That is the final mechanism that locks the pattern in. Over-explaining functions like a bid for permission to have boundaries. Think about how strange that is. You are asking someone to approve your limits, and once you do that, your limit stops being a limit. It becomes a debate. People respect boundaries that look like reality. They argue with boundaries that look like preferences. The more you explain, the more your boundary sounds like a preference. So if you want a framework you can actually use, here it is. I call it the 3 signals of permission. People decide they have permission when they detect one of these signals: elasticity, invisibility, and negotiation. Elasticity means your limits stretch when pressure appears. Invisibility means your cost stays hidden, so your giving looks free. Negotiation means your no sounds tentative and can be bargained down. If you remove those 3 signals, kindness stops being misread as permission without you becoming cold or aggressive. You can stay warm, but you stop being writable. Let me show you what that looks like in real language that does not feel like a personality transplant. Instead of elastic yeses, you use fixed containers. I can help for 20 minutes. I can do one more revision. I can talk, but I cannot problem solve tonight. Containers turn your kindness into a defined shape. People can still receive it, but they cannot expand it endlessly. Instead of invisible costs, you name the trade-off without drama. I can do that, but it means I will need to push another deadline. I can come, but I will need to leave early to recover. You are not complaining. You are making the cost legible, which triggers reciprocity and reduces entitlement. And instead of negotiation, you use calm finality, not harshness. Finality. That does not work for me. Full stop. No court case. No closing argument, because your boundary is not a thesis, it is a fact. Now here is the part that most people miss, and if you get this, you will stop blaming your personality. Kindness is not the problem. Unclear terms are the problem. Your kindness becomes permission when it functions like an open-ended contract. People assume renewal. They assume expansion. They assume access. So you need terms. Not because you are transactional, but because humans need clarity to behave ethically. Ambiguity is where rationalizations breed. People do not say, I am exploiting this person. They say, they did not seem to mind. They say, they always do it. They say, if it was a problem, they would say something. Your terms remove their excuses. And interestingly, they also remove your resentment, because resentment is often just unexpressed terms colliding with reality. Let me tie all of this into one unified idea you can keep in your head. You live in 2 systems at once: the moral system and the predictive system. In your moral system, kindness means goodness. In the predictive system, kindness is data about what will happen if someone asks for more. Most conflict comes from confusing the 2. You keep behaving morally and expecting others to interpret predictively. They keep behaving predictively and you judge them morally. That mismatch creates heartbreak. So the ultimate move is not to stop being kind, it is to make your kindness non-predictive of access. That sounds abstract, so here is the practical translation. You want to be a kind person who is not an easy model, not chaotic, not inconsistent, just not automatically available. Your kindness should not reveal your flexibility. It should reveal your values. Values-based kindness says, I help because I choose to, and I choose within limits. Access-based kindness says, I help because I can be pressured into it. People treat those two very differently, and if you are wondering, will this make people leave? Yes. Some will. That is the point. Not because you want to punish anyone, but because you are filtering for people who can handle a reality where you exist as a full person, and not a service. So here is the closing loop back to the beginning. Your kindness is not being misread as permission because you are too nice. It is being read as permission because your signals make access look normal. Change the signals, keep the warmth, and suddenly your kindness stops attracting takers and starts attracting adults. If this changed the way you see your relationships, I would genuinely like to hear what pattern you recognized in the comments. And the next time you feel that familiar guilt after a small no, ask yourself one question. Are you being kind, or are you negotiating for permission to have a boundary?